Controversial move targeting domestic terrorism. In a move that has sparked intense debate, former President Donald Trump signed a presidential memorandum on Thursday, aiming to tackle what he described as a radical left-wing domestic terror network. However, this action has raised significant concerns and drawn fierce criticism from those who view it as a potential license for a broad crackdown on political opponents. The target. Who's on Trump's radar? Trump. In a response to journalists, hinted at potential targets, including George Soros, a Hungarian-born philanthropist, and Reid Hoffman, a billionaire venture capitalist. He suggested that these individuals could be funding what he considers to be extremist groups, although he remained vague about specific details. Open Society Foundation's response. The Open Society Foundations, funded by Soros, had previously criticized the Trump administration for politically motivated attacks on civil society. They hit back at reports that the Justice Department was planning to target their organization. ACLU's condemnation. Hina Shamsi, from the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, strongly condemned Trump's move. She stated, "After a harrowing week for our First Amendment rights, the president is using political violence as an excuse to label nonprofits and activists as domestic terrorists. This is a dangerous and shameful tactic." The memorandum's purpose. At the signing ceremony, the memorandum was presented as a strategy to investigate and dismantle organized political violence and domestic terrorism. It was said to involve a government-wide response, including the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Forces, the Department of Justice, and the Department of Treasury. ACLU's concern. The ACLU expressed concern about the involvement of Joint Terrorism Task Forces, stating that they have a history of wrongly targeting protesters, communities of color, and dissenters. Trump's vague claims. Surrounded by his cabinet, Trump claimed the goal was to target the funders of these groups, but he was unclear about which groups he referred to and who the funders were. He described them as anarchists and agitators who are hired by wealthy individuals, some of whom he claimed to know personally. Legal perspective. Daniel Richman, a professor at Columbia Law School, explained that the memorandum itself may not carry much legal weight. He stated, "Executive orders cannot create new crimes, and this one doesn't. It simply directs the Terrorism Task Force to pursue what they usually would." However, Richman added, "The concern is that this administration only wants to pursue politically motivated terrorism that opposes its agenda, the Trump administration's strategy." Richman noted that the administration doesn't need new laws to achieve this. Existing laws already provide the means to target ideological opponents. A former activist's fear. Jason Charter. A former activist who faced charges during Trump's first term expressed fear about the potential consequences. He said, "Antifa is anti-fascism, and anti-fascism is widely shared. Being against fascism shouldn't be illegal." Controversial labeling. Charter added this is an attempt to label people engaging in protected activities under the Bill of Rights as terrorists. Right-wing retribution. The memorandum comes amid calls for retribution from the right wing following the murder of far-right pundit Charlie Kirk. Trump and his supporters have blamed this incident on an organized left-wing network, despite early indications that the suspect acted alone. Dallas ICE facility attack. The memorandum also references the deadly attack on a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, facility in Dallas, where one detainee was killed and 2 others were injured. One of the bullets used in the attack was inscribed with the message anti-ICE. The memorandum's scope. The memorandum combines various unrelated episodes, including a failed assassination attempt on Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, the murder of the CEO of United Healthcare, and unrest in Los Angeles and Portland, Oregon. White House Deputy's perspective. Stephen Miller, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, described the initiative as historical and significant. He stated, This is the first time we're seeing a government-wide effort to dismantle left-wing terrorism, including Antifa and other organizations involved in political violence and terrorism, funding, and intimidation. Miller claimed that an entire system of feeder organizations is funding harassment, doxing, and intimidation of public officials, leading to attempted assassinations. He described these actions as carefully planned and executed, constituting terrorism on American soil, political violence, a one-sided narrative. Trump and his allies have portrayed political violence as primarily associated with the left, overlooking incidents where Democrats have been targeted by suspected right-wing extremists, or cases where the perpetrators' motives are unclear. Trump's response to the ICE facility attack. Trump tied the ICE facility attack to the Democrats and their criticism of his immigration policies, similar to his response to Kirk's killing. He wrote, "This violence is a result of the radical left Democrats' demonization of law enforcement and their calls to dismantle ICE. The continuing violence from radical left terrorists must be stopped. ICE officers and other brave members of law enforcement are under threat." Authorities' findings. However, authorities stated on Thursday that they found no evidence linking the suspect to any specific group or entity. The suspect did not mention any government agency other than ICE. Antifa designation. Following Kirk's killing, Trump issued an executive order designating Antifa, a loose network of groups involved in confrontations with the far right, as a domestic terrorist organization. The memorandum's justification. The new memorandum states that this political violence is not isolated, but is a culmination of organized campaigns of intimidation, radicalization, threats, and violence aimed at silencing opposition, limiting political activity, and preventing the functioning of a democratic society. It calls for a new law enforcement strategy to investigate all participants in these conspiracies, including the organized structures and funding sources behind them. ACLU's historical perspective. Shamsi, the director of the ACLU's National Security Project, added, "Intimidation tactics against human rights and civil liberties advocates are not new in our country's history. Civil rights movement leaders were also labeled security threats and subjected to investigation and monitoring." Conclusion. Trump's memorandum has sparked a heated debate, with critics arguing it could be used to target political opponents. The line between protecting national security and suppressing dissent is thin, and the potential consequences of this move are far-reaching. What are your thoughts on this controversial action? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments below.